Welcome to season 2, episode 2 of Behind the Start Lines. I'm your host, Troy Schooley, the CEO of P3R. I am missing my co-host today, Eric Burnett, but we have 3 awesome guests that are going to be joining us very soon. They are brought to you, and I'm excited to announce this. And we announced this about a month ago, and we continue to do more and more. But this podcast is about women's health, and it's about our partnership with Magee Women's Research Institute and Foundation. We have recently partnered with them to really talk about women's health and to talk about what Magee Women's Research Institute and Foundation does. Everybody knows Magee Women's Hospital. Essentially, Magee Women's Research Institute and Foundation is the straw that stirs the drink behind this. And they're doing unbelievable work. And we have one of the doctors that are coming on today. And we also have 2 of our P3 runners that are coming on. Lauren Wallace is going to be joining us, as well as Jen Bigham. And Jen is a returning podcast guest, and we invited her back to be able to talk about this. Jen actually just had her 4th child. So we're going to have a great conversation about women's health, really dig into the research of what Magee Women's Research Institute and Foundation is coming up with. And I think we're going to find out that it just continues to evolve, and we're going to have more studies. We're going to have better research out there to be able to help women achieve their goals, whether it's walking or moving or running their first 5K or their marathon. I think a lot of it translates to what we do here at P3R. And it's not about being an elite athlete. It's about being able to juggle everything that women do throughout the day, whether it's kids or jobs or work, things like that, and be able to get out and get that exercise and to be active and to be able to fit that in. And we'll also talk about sleep. And I'd like to welcome the 3 guests I talked about. We have Dr. Bethany Barone Gibbs, we have Lauren Wright, and we have Jen Bigham. Dr. Gibbs, do you want to give us a little background of what you do?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me here. So I'm a new fellow at the Magee Women's Research Institute and Foundation, and I'm also an associate professor in the Department of Health and Human Development. My training is epidemiology. So unlike the amazing people studying COVID vaccines right now, I study how obesity and cardiovascular disease spread in the communities. And what I really study is how physical activity and sedentary behavior can help reduce the spread of those kind of diseases. I do a lot of research in women during pregnancy, after pregnancy, and desk workers. So I'm really excited to share that with you all today.
Awesome. We can't wait. Lauren, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. My name is Lauren Wright. I am the Director of Undergraduate Recruitment at the University of Pittsburgh, where I am a current doctoral candidate and hopefully graduating this summer. I am also a P3 runner. I have done about 60 different organized races. So stress relief is done through running as far as I'm concerned. But I'm excited to be part of this conversation because health is the one thing that seems to go when you get super busy doing all of those things at once. So really grateful to be here. Thanks again.
Absolutely. For Thank you. And Jen, so Jen was on season 1 of Behind the Start Line. She was so damn good. We had her back for season 2. Jen, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Jen Bigham, and I've lived in Squirrel Hill for the last 7.5 years. I'm an elite runner, and I'm a P3 runner as well. I just had my 4th baby. She is 5 weeks old today, and we're just doing well. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you today as well. Oh, I'm a coach as well. I'm a coach to high school runners.
Absolutely. And Jen, are you a 3-time Great Race champion?
Oh yeah, that's 3-time. Yeah.
I can't even count on my hands how many times you won the Great Race. So Jen is an elite runner as well. So we're going to jump into it. I can't wait to have this conversation and can't wait to get you guys' viewpoints. Dr. Brown Gibbs, you talked a little bit about what you do, what your research does. Let's dig in a little bit about, the focus and the lifestyle behavior of women and how important it is. And something you touched on a little bit earlier when we were talking off is that 24-hour cycle. Right now we talk about running a race, and you might run a 5K in 30 minutes or 50 minutes. I don't care. But talk a little bit about how important that 24-hour cycle is.
Yeah. So when I started studying physical activity and the health effects, probably about 20 years ago in grad school, it was very much about, there was exercise and then there were people who didn't exercise. And there were only two kinds of people. And of course, the people who exercised were healthier. And so we did a lot of research showing the health benefits of that. And those are very established now. And really, I'd say the big question for exercise per se is just how do we get more people to do it? So that's where we're at with exercise in particular. But you also, I don't know if anyone's ever seen the movie WALL-E, where there's those little people that are just kind of like going around on carts and they never move.
Yeah.
That was futuristic at the time. But if you think about our lives, especially during COVID, we never have to move. We don't shop. We don't, we often don't leave our little office. We don't even get to walk to the parking garage to our office. So especially in the last year, but Zoom technology, working from home, all of these things have really limited our opportunities to even get casual physical activity throughout the day. Computers are really the big thing that has made our lives so much easier, but has engineered physical activity out of our lives. And so a lot of my research now is looking at the rest of your day. So you absolutely need to exercise. And if you do that for 30 minutes, which is about the recommendations, that's only 3% of your waking day. And the other 97%, unfortunately, many people are spending the whole time sitting. And so we are looking at whether we can reduce that. We can find ways to allow people to be more active throughout their day, whether we can change their patterns. Certainly standing or moving all day is not good either. So we're trying to study what is the best balance and pattern of movement, sitting, and physical activity. And of course, sleep is super important too. So, we always try to put more in the day and then we take away from sleep, which is not a good idea either. So one of the studies I have right now that just started recruiting for pregnant women, it's called Pregnancy 24/7, and it's funded by NIH. And what we're doing is just recruiting women in their first trimester, and we are putting a bunch of monitors on them in each trimester, and we're figuring out what they just naturally do for a 24-hour day. And then we're going to link that to health outcomes. And our preliminary evidence suggests that women who are in the super high sitting category have more adverse pregnancy outcomes. Their babies have a reduced sort of growth and development at the time of birth. And they have other sort of mental health, worse mental health. They have worse quality of life. So we think that probably this 24-hour behavior is really important during pregnancy, along with, just in our everyday lives.
That's awesome. And Jen, congrats to the fourth baby.
Thank you.
Does any of that relate to you? I'm sure. So Jen has a big following on social media. So that's how I'm able to follow her. Jen was out there 8.5 months pregnant, running and staying active. Can you does that translate to what doctors just said?
Definitely. There are days during pregnancy where you don't feel like going out, but there was never a day where, I might have walked some days and run some days or done a mixture, but anytime I got outside and moved in some way, I felt so much better, than if I decided to lay on the couch and prolong it. I always felt better later, when I finished.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Lauren, you have 60 races under your belt. And I think one thing that doctor just said that really stuck out to me, and we see it at the start line, is how important sleep is. She's really digging into the research of sleep. Does any of that resonate with you when you go to a start line, thinking about, those race day jitters and your training leading up to it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yesterday I ran into the situation of not having enough sleep and I fell off the treadmill for the first time, probably 10 years. Don't make the mistake of getting exhausted during that exercise. But I will say, yes, sometimes the night before a race, you're excited, you have that adrenaline. It is hard to get yourself that proper rest, but it is so important. I definitely feel when I've had restorative sleep, when I felt like I got into a good REM stage, I'm much more energized the next day. I'm much more ready to go, particularly in the training process too, when you're trying to drag yourself out of bed for those long runs. I am not an elite runner like Jen. So a long run for me, if I'm training for a half marathon, that's going to be several hours. It's not a quick commitment. So I have to rest up or else my body will tell me, you're not running for 4 hours today. And it's just not going to work out. So I 100% agree what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. And I think, over the last year, it's been super difficult. And Doctor, tell us a little bit about what COVID has done to, the lifestyle of staying active, and a lot of women, whether it's jobs or kids, it's been even more of a stressor to be able to stay active, to fit in your walk or your run when a lot of them have their kids at home. They're still trying to juggle a job. So tell us a little bit about that. And it's been brutal, I know.
Yeah, well, so there's been a lot of really interesting research that I'm really happy to sort of piece together and give you the big picture. So the first thing that happened right during the lockdown, especially for people in urban environments, and they had some really cool research done with like phone apps where people's steps were being recorded on a global level during the lockdown. People their steps per day plummeted, right? Because people just couldn't go. People weren't going anywhere. People weren't even leaving their homes. So there was major restriction of physical activity, all day physical activity in the initial stages, and then as things started to open up, and I think in the US, we were really good about saying it's still okay to go out and exercise. And by the way, please do that. I know gyms were closed and that made things difficult, but certainly people were still being encouraged to get out. So what the data is looking like is that for some people, this has given them more free time, right? So because you can't do a lot of the things that you used to do, a lot of people have taken up hiking and walking and biking and things, so that there is a segment of the population who is actually doing better with their physical activity than they were doing before. They've gained time back. They're not commuting, etc. There are a lot of people though who, and these are the people I research, who all of their activity was getting up and going to work. That was all the activity they got in a normal day. And maybe they had to walk to the bus. Maybe they at work had to walk around and do things. And now they're looking at a Zoom call all day and they're not even getting out of their bed. And so I think there's a real dichotomy here. And I think we'll be seeing, in a couple of, in a year or two, how this pans out. But I certainly think an area that we need to research is trying to find ways for people who are working from home to be more active during the day, because it's real easy to get very few steps. I would want to hear from the ladies. When you work from home, I don't know if you guys track your steps, but do you notice that your steps are like much less than when you kind of go out, when you get out in the world?
You want me to hear, Lauren? You like? Thankfully, I guess my job is coaching runners, so I am out. I'm out moving for my job, which is nice. I think that when the pandemic first, when things started getting shut down, we made a commitment in my family to get the kids outside, because we saw that, this is going to be, bad for our mental health and bad for our physical health. So even if we just took the kids to, the cemetery by our house so we could ride bikes for a little bit, we felt like that was doing something, and usually they would want to be out more. So I guess in my situation, we didn't see that just because of the nature of my job and my family. Yeah, we found ways to make it work.
Yeah. So anyway, the other thing, particularly for women, is that even without the pandemic, right, there's very established literature that shows physical activity levels decline specifically for women after the birth of a child. So sedentary behavior also goes down, right? So women engage in more light activity, taking care of kids, cleaning, laundry, but they're not getting as much physical activity with young children in the home. That's very established in the research. And women, and now, add COVID on top of it, as Troy said, where we're trying to, work and our kids are home and we're taking the lion's share of that, and not in every household, but on average more so. It's more difficult than ever. And so I think we need to, my advice is to do just what Jen is doing, find ways to get outside, try to make it part of your childcare duties, right? To be active. That's going to be good for everybody. The other thing too, is just to be kind to yourself, and also recognize that even just getting up and moving a little bit counts. Some people, if they can't do their 60-minute run, they feel like that day, they feel like they didn't exercise. You know what? If a 10-minute walk is a lot better than a no-minute walk. So we just have to have that kind of mindset that little breaks are important and, just find ways to work that into our everyday.
Yeah, that's a great point. Lauren, 60 races under your belts, they went away this year. How did you stay active virtually and just getting that movement in?
Yeah, I did it. not right away. So one of the tough things is I'm a college recruiter. So a lot of our work went from entirely on the road traveling to being in front of a computer. So I've been all over the country on Zoom, but not physically, via my legs. I do have a trampoline next to my desk. So that's
I love it.
Yeah, one of the little $35 ones from Amazon that literally I can just go and step on in between meetings, because we all saw the death of travel time between meetings, where it's just like you don't have anywhere to be. I'm going to stack meetings right on top of each other. And so there literally is no being active in between. But I will say being a P3 runner definitely helped because I'm joking, but I am contractually obligated to exercise. So that encouraged me a little bit to make sure I was doing it. And then we're also having a step competition at work. So I'm very, very competitive. And so that's encouraged me to say, I don't necessarily want to get up and exercise, but even if it's 10, 11 o'clock, just going, doing a couple miles on the treadmill to make sure that, I'm there for my team has also been a way to start incorporating more exercise.
Well, Lauren, I love what you're saying because, as I said in the beginning, we know that exercise is good for you. And what researchers are trying to do right now is figure out how to get more people to do it. And I love your strategies, which are our social support, right? Finding a way to be accountable and have other people supporting you and working together. That's a really strong way to have sustained physical activity long term. So I love to hear that.
That's awesome. And we've talked a lot about the obvious benefits of staying active. Doctor, tell us a little bit about the not so obvious, active lifestyle changes, especially for women. Like it's something that you wouldn't normally think, but once you get into that routine, you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better this way or that way.
I don't know. We've already sort of touched on a couple of the not so obvious ones, which I think are very much about stress relief and mental health. But I would, there's been in the past 2 or 3 years, US and internationally, new guidelines have come out about physical activity that have really changed the way that we think about it to more toward this 24-hour idea. It used to be that you used to have to exercise for at least 10 continuous minutes for it to count. Now it only has to be 1 minute. Also, the newest guidelines recommend that you are going to see immediate benefits that day, mental health benefits, also sort of blood pressure and other benefits in a single bout of exercise. So again, this is just, you don't have to be overwhelmed and think I need to, run a marathon next week, even though I know that's what your group is doing, which is awesome to get people to do that. But so every single minute counts. You're going to see immediate benefits from it. And, something I get asked a lot, which I think is important for women, especially when, a lot of the interventions that we're doing right now in desk workers are just getting people to stand up more often and just move around a little bit. Right. And so I've actually been in a little bit of academic kind of battles, like letter writing battles with someone that it doesn't really burn that many more calories to stand up and just move around a little bit, right? Exercise is going to burn a lot more. And if you really want to lose weight, you probably need to eat less, calorie dense food. So, I think that if you go into your all day physical activity and think that that's going to help you lose weight and that's your only motivation, you're going to be disappointed. And so what you have to think about are all the other so many benefits, the mental health benefits, the concentration benefits, the you just have more energy. It's almost counterintuitive, but if you've ever sat all day, you feel terrible and tired at the end of the day. Our bodies did not evolve to sit in a chair and look at a computer all day. So you feel awful at the end of the day. And if you can just stand up and move a little bit more during the day, you're going to have more energy when you get home. And then maybe you'll be able to go out for that walk or run. Absolutely.
Jen, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, definitely. And, for people maybe who haven't done anything for a while, I'm coming, and are worried about starting, I'm coming from nothing. I had a kind of traumatic birth experience. But like even just laying on the floor and doing the breathing exercises, which was true exercise for me in the beginning, or walking 0.3 of a mile around my block, changed my day in those beginning days, postpartum. And it would be the same for someone, if you just get yourself moving, that's when I really started feeling like healing in all ways, and my blood pressure started to go down, and my mental health really improved. And all of this just makes sense.
Sure. Same with you, Lauren. I mean, you talked a lot about Zoom calls, and I'm on Zoom calls all day. Does it resonate with you? Is like the days that you are able to get up and be active, does it change?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The days that I can exercise before work, I 100% feel better. I make it longer through the day. I don't know about you all, but I'm one of those people who you get me at 4:30 in the morning and I'm great, but by 2:00 in the afternoon, I'm on the decline. I can usually make it to about 2:30 if I exercise in the morning. Being a little bit facetious, it's about 3. But yeah, it's definitely helpful in that way. And then from a health standpoint, from just talking to women's issues, I'm somebody who suffers from polycystic ovarian syndrome. And so that I know is something my doctor very frequently recommends. Exercise, physical fitness is great for your symptoms. Obviously, the ultimate goal is weight loss. That does the most, but just having that exercise can help with, your hormones and your mindset, which is something that can really be affected with PCOS. So it's the benefits of exercise are definitely extended, particularly, for those women who have issues like that, like myself.
Awesome. And Dr. Gibbs, we probably touched on it a little bit earlier, but talk a little bit about the challenges in women's health right now that you're seeing through your research. And we talked about but what are some other challenges that might not be on the surface?
Yeah. So, it's really interesting that I'm sure everyone's seen all the, American Heart Association campaigns, Go Red for Women. For a long time, heart disease and research was very much done in men and white men. So the beginning research was all sort of in that population, which may have a really different experience with the way disease is developed and the way that and the lifestyle behaviors that lead to that disease. So there's been a lot of initiatives to study heart disease in women, which is still the number one killer in women. And it's really interesting. One of the areas I'm getting into right now is looking at younger women, because that is a critical period during pregnancy, across pregnancy, after pregnancy, where cardiovascular risk develops actually at a faster rate. So women have kind of like really low cardiovascular risk and blood pressure when they're young, like really young. And then during midlife, they have this risk acceleration. And then the way that cardiovascular disease presents when women are older is different than men, and hasn't been researched as much. So this is an area I'm really interested in, because we're trying to figure out how to prevent this from happening with modifiable lifestyle behaviors like physical activity and reducing sedentary behavior. And really interesting, specifically during pregnancy, are some of the adverse pregnancy outcomes like gestational hypertension and preeclampsia, gestational diabetes. All of these things put women at high risk for developing cardiovascular disease later in life. And we don't really know how to prevent them. We have a few things, but not many. So that's kind of the idea of the Pregnancy 24/7 study, to see if physical activity and sedentary behavior patterns and sleep can help women reduce their risk of this. So we have some kind of toolkit that we can use to help women.
That's great. Yeah. My next question was going to be to Doctor, as far as, are you optimistic about the future of women's health research? I think you just answered my question right there.
I am. I feel like there's a lot of energy around it right now.
It seems like, you're going younger. That's tremendous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Prevention, right? That's what it's got to be.
Lauren, talk a little bit about what you want to see as we go into the future with women's health and the research behind it and the outcomes.
Yeah, I think just, greater transparency around how many people are struggling with the same things. I know with PCOS, right? Like I was someone who was diagnosed over a decade ago, and then more and more my friends are being diagnosed with the same ailment. And I think being able to have communities, I think you learn that a lot, even just from running, that like support is a game changer in so many areas, and just not feeling like I'm the only person who's suffering with this. I know that I even see that being somebody who is an overweight runner. Like I haven't run a full marathon at less than 200 pounds. So it is possible, that people do it, but you don't see as much of that. So as you can see more and more, women who are struggling with issues, whether it is, postpartum issues or diseases or just being overweight and exercise, I think some of that is what makes it hard to start because you feel like, if I am struggling with depression, or if I am somebody who suffers from a reproductive disorder, I'm somebody who weighs quote unquote a lot, I really can't go out and do the same type of exercise, particularly something like running that has so many benefits. And that's frankly not true, but we just need to see more of it to start to believe that.
That's a great point. There's somewhat of a stigma around running, right? And that's why we've changed our whole mission statement here, is that as much as I love Jen, I don't need 40,000 Jens. I need 25,000 Laurens, and I need 10,000 Jens, because we just want people to be active and move, because it'll change Lauren the same way it'll change Jen. So I appreciate you bringing that up. That's a great point. Jen, talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, I agree. And Lauren, that was such a good point, I think there are not many people who are gifted in terms of like running or, whatever. We need to appeal to the broader world, so that, and I love the move. I love that you just focus on move, because not everyone is going to listen to this and say, oh yeah, Jen, did this and I'm inspired to go run the marathon now. But if you see just the common person who, stereotypically you wouldn't expect to, finish a marathon or a half marathon or the 5K or to do the kids marathon with their kid, and now they're doing that. You're inspired to do that too.
Absolutely. Before we wrap it up, Doctor, I'm going to kick it over to you, and I want you to give like a key piece of advice for all of our listeners out there. 60% of our finishers at all of our events are female, and give us that nugget that somebody can take with them and maybe be a little motivational as well. Not that you've been motivational the whole time.
Oh, no,
but at the end, we like to drop the bomb and leave that.
I mean, if I have one like message that I try to get out to everybody I talk to, it's really that we've got to change our minds, that it's got to be a super intense bout of exercise and the rest of the day doesn't matter. We absolutely have to be moving all day. If people want concrete recommendations, I say, each hour, try to stand for at least 15 minutes of each hour and try to move at least once each hour, even for a couple minutes. And that has measurable benefits for your health that we have demonstrated again and again. People think it's not enough. It is enough. You should be exercising too, but the rest of that day matters. So this is something that applies to everybody, especially in our sort of new Zoom world. The newest guidelines say, in general, we need to move more and sit less. And that's what we need to do.
That's a great piece of advice. Lauren, Jen, any parting issues there?
Yeah, I was tempted to make my quirk just do it, but I think the appropriate one for this audience is the ready, set, move. But I would say not ready, not set, move, because I do think that that's kind of the point that we've been making is sometimes you just got to get up and do it. And if you wait for you to be ready or to be set up, you may never take that motion. But what I think, Dr. Gibbs has emphasized is like, just do it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever the case may be. You don't have to be ready to run a mile. You just got to be ready to move a little bit. And that can make a huge difference.
Wow. Yeah, I love that, Lauren. That, like, how do I follow that? I mean, that's just perfect and amazing. My only tip is there are so many like fitness trackers you can use now. Yeah. And something that really helps me, on days when I don't want to do something is like setting up a competition with my friends. Like you've said, even on like the Apple Watch, you can compete with someone and they're like standing for a certain amount of time, or I even compete with my kids on things, and it gets them moving, it gets me moving, and we all have different goals. So like my daily move goal is very different from my kids' daily move goal. Well, right now it's kind of the same, but normally it's very different, but we can both be working, or we can all be working toward our goals in a different way. And there's the accountability there.
Yeah. And Jen, just to follow up on your, tracker, these trackers are great. A lot of researchers get mad. They're not quite as accurate as our crazy research grade. I say they're motivational. Most of them, sometimes it's not set. So there's reminders to move on Fitbits and Apple. Some people turn those off or ignore them. Don't ignore them. If that goes off, do something. Get on your trampoline for 2 minutes, walk up and down the stairs one time, turn on a song and dance with your kids. You don't have to change your clothes. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be some crazy, 5-mile run. It just a little something every hour if you can.
Well, like Lauren mentioned too, it turns into a competition. And sometimes that'll be what drives you to take a walk or jump on a trampoline. Well, ladies, this conversation was awesome. Dr. Gibbs, we got to have you back once we continue with that research. I think Lauren and Jen will definitely come back to talk about it. Thank you for joining Behind the Start Line. What a great conversation. 3 very dynamic women. I can't thank Magee Women's Research Institute and Foundation enough. I talked a little bit at the beginning about our partnership with them. We recently launched our Ready, Set, Move box with Magee Women's Research Institute and Foundation. That was a only women-focused box, and $10 of that box went directly to Girls on the Run Foundation here in Pittsburgh. So we always talk about partnerships on the podcast, and this one, is a great partnership that will be able to really make an impact. And that's our goal with a lot of our partnerships is to make an impact. We're going to work together to support women runners, and really inspire the next generation of girls to be able to run or be able to walk or just move. And I think that's super important when you have 14 races, that 60% of our finishers are female. And we know that everything that they go through to get to that start line, to be able to put in that training time, to be able to sacrifice that. So it's a super important initiative here at P3R. And it's super important for Magee Research Institute and Foundation just to be able to partner with us to essentially educate. And that's what we did. I thought, Dr. Brown Gibbs, unbelievable. I can't wait to hear some of the research that they continue to push out. I thought one thing that was super interesting that she brought up, and I think we all kind of knew this on the surface, but it seems like they're digging in to how important the 24-hour cycle is to being moving and being able to be active throughout the day, because you get sleep in there. And she mentioned it that a lot of the times that when you're active during the day and you're doing things, and I think she said, you're watching the kids or, taking care of the kids or cleaning the house, things like that, your sleep lacks on the backside of that. So they're really diving into the 24-hour inactivity of that. So I can't wait to see that research. We're going to have her back on periodically on the podcast and talk to her about the research, because I do think it's super beneficial for our listeners out there and our runners to be able to see these new researches. I thought the one thing that she said that really sticks out to me is that, with the Heart Association, all the research was based around white males, and there was no really research based around females, and they're changing that. And that's why Magee Women's Research Institute and Foundation is going to be pushing out so much great information, great research that's going to benefit our community, our region, probably the country and the world. So that's super exciting to have her on today. Another thing they're going to be doing with us, throughout the year is, and this is specifically for our marathon this year, but they're the sponsor of our PR bell. So if somebody PRs in their 5K or their half marathon or their marathon, they'll see the nice Magee Women's Research Institute and Foundation logos and be able to correlate what they heard on the podcast or some of the content that we're pushing out on social media, and really put 2 and 2 together and really be able to dig in and hopefully learn and hopefully maybe change some habits or some lifestyle things, just some small tweaks, like Doctor said, that can really change them for the future. And Lauren and Jen were great. Jen's a 3-time champion of the great race, an elite athlete. It was great to have her back on. And Lauren, one of our P3 runners, does a great job. She talked about being, she's been involved with 60 live events. That's awesome. We can't wait to get her back at a start line, but it was great to have them on and really have a good conversation with them. So I want to thank everybody for joining us at episode 2. Episode 3 is right around the corner. Thank you guys so much for listening to episode 1. We just got the numbers and they are tremendous and we appreciate the support. Make sure you continue to send us your questions behindthelines@p3r.org. So if you want to send me a question, I think everybody knows that I will be sometimes brutally honest about it. Send the questions at behindtheline@p3r.org. We'll answer them at the end of each segment, at the end of each pod. And make sure you follow us at Run with P3R on all of our channels, whether it's Instagram or Facebook. And drop a like, tell us what you think. Give us some ideas for who you guys want to hear. Give us some ideas for the guests that you want to hear. Thanks everybody for listening. Until next time, keep moving.